Hey guys, welcome back. So last week one of the scenarios we discussed was to move back up, to the top of this trend line, resulting in a fake breakout and a fast failure, right? So far last week, that's kind of what we witnessed, right? Versus a breakout, right? So at this point in time, I kind of want to, talk about the two scenarios that I am watching. Number one is the fact that, if I drew a trend line from the low in October all the way to all the times we bounce, you can see that the market has sold off to this level of support. So if the market were to hold this area between 4040 and 4030, then I think we could very likely move back into support near 4141 or 4171 before we come back down for that C wave in a bigger ABC. So this is kind of one of the scenarios I'm watching to see, considering we're still in this bull flag, right? If we do end up holding this double support area, we could have a bounce before we go lower, right? In an expanded flat. The other one I'm watching is, again, given that this is the trend channel that we have broken, and given that larger picture, this is trend line, support. And if we were to, break this 4020 level, we're very likely, going to have a much larger sell off down to this 3821 area. And that would, make sense to the fact that, that would kind of be the 382 fib, right? It's pretty much, if I reverse it, you'll see that it's the reverse 618. So that would again make sense that the market would likely sell off there. So those are kind of the two options. I'm looking to see if we bounce and have a less, deeper sell, or if we don't bounce it over, very likely gonna have a much larger sell before the next move up. So again, you may ask me, right? Like, hey, this kind of is support. Why can't we just, kind of move to the upside? I do think that it is possible we move to the upside, but I want to mention, right? Last week we discussed the dollar breakout, right? And you can see that we broke out and we were kind of just consolidating sideways, right? So the dollar, kind of bringing out its wedge, kind of, puts a damper on in the market being like more bullish. We talked about a Wix breakout, and you can see that, the Wix kind of moved up like 18 to 20%, right? So the Wix, being broken out and the dollar being broken out, right? They can retrace a little bit, which could cause a small bounce, but it kind of looks a little more, fishy if you wanted to be like a bigger equity bull. But that's not to say, right? That's not to say those can be a false breakout that sell off. Like, it's completely light as till, like I said, 4020 breaks. And psychologically, 4,000 breaks, there's gonna be no sell-off. Again, depends on momentum and volume in the undersurface. But if you were looking for a bull version, right, this level would have to hold, right, before we do a 1 2 3 4 5, and then finish out that wave structure. So this is kind of what I have. If you wanted to have a 20% chance of a bull, so this would kind of what that would be look like. So I just wanted to kind of go over the indexes and some of the indicators. Now let's look at this week's watch list, right? The first one that I have is actually on semiconductors, and the reason for that is my Wi-Fi. Yeah, all right. The reason for that is you can see that, since 2020, like on has not, had any significant kind of sell-off. And if I were to count 5 waves, I do count 5 waves to the upside, right? So again, let's go to the RSI on the weekly, and you can see the RSI divergence, right? You can very clearly see that the divergence has been going on from 2021. And when you see such, tremendous like weekly divergence, usually results in a harsh sell-off, right? So that's one of the reasons I do think that on, right? Even again, you can finally see that it's finally like had like a slowed inside candle. That's not to say it has to break down this week, but definitely want you guys to, put this on your watch list and keep watching it. But yeah, below, 80, 79, I do think that on, comes down to 70 and 65, right? And at least, right, at bare minimum, I think that it would retest 50 at some point, in the next 6 months. So yeah, this is what I have, right, on. Again, the next one, before I do coin, I kind of want to look at Bitcoin, right? The weekly chart of Bitcoin, you can see that we have, come up right to the 200 days. So one of two things is going to happen. Either we reject this 200 day, right? Come back down to support, before we have one more impulse to the upside. Or the other scenario is that, again, this is a very important level, right? This level at 24.8, right? So if the market were to break over this 24.8 area, then we would, push up this way, wherein we go retest 37K directly before the market sells off lower. So those are kind of the two scenarios I'm looking at. And again, same way, depending on what happens to Bitcoin, it would kind of be dependent on coin, right? And we know that on the weekly, like this was the downturn. We discussed coin when it was in the 35 area. It's had a very nice move. And bigger picture, again, if I drew a trend line, since it's IPO origination, you can see that we retested it and we bounced. So as long as we hold over 55, right, we consolidate near 55, right, coin could push up to 120 at some point. And again, that would be dependent on whether Bitcoin breaks 25K now, or whether, if Bitcoin were to go retest previous support around 2120, right, before it goes higher, then coin very likely, comes down to maybe this 45 level before we push higher. So yeah, I just wanted to maybe bring, this onto your attention in the event that Bitcoin does break out, right? Or if it breaks down, coin could again, you can trade it as a substitute. So yeah, again, it's bullish over 69. And if it breaks 69, then it's easily going to go up to 100, right? It's bearish below 55 down to 45 on coin. All right, let's look at the next one, right? The next stock that I have is JP Morgan. Again, the reason for that, on the weekly, you can see that we have pushed up near the 200-day, kind of 3 weeks, right? Even though it's gone a little bit higher, it's kind of been choppy, had 2 inside candles. So this inside candle is very likely going to cause a big move in either direction. And again, kind of symbolic of the fact that it's near its 200-day, right? So again, below 138, it would break this ascending, channel, going to come back down to 130, right? And if we get over above 144, there's really no resistance up to 155. So yeah, those are kind of your bull and bear levels on JP Morgan, right? Let's look at the next one, which is J&J. And again, the reason for that is last week we came back down to the 200-day moving average, right? And we had a bounce, right? So if I go to the daily chart, as long as this level, right, we could have an inside day today. But if we break over once, if this follows through, right, basically if I do a drawn trend line this way, you can see that if we break over 162, then the next level is 166 and probably back to retest this EMAs, right, at 170. So that would kind of, be the bullish case, given that we had such a strong bounce off demand. We could, push higher before we push lower. Alternatively, right, if this, again, like we discussed, right, if I go back to the weekly chart, we know bigger picture on the weekly, right, this was your support, and we retested the channel and we failed, right? So if that was just a reflexive bounce and we do break the 200 week, right, I do think if we were going to break this 200 week, it would likely probably be an inside week, right? So there wouldn't really be a trade there. So yeah, but if we do end up having an inside week, then this would, again, no level till 147. So both ways, kind of interesting where J&J currently is at. Just wanted to discuss that. And lastly, let's look at AVGO. And AVGO is again another semiconductor stock, right? So we did break out of this bull flag, but if you look at the weekly chart, same as some of the other stocks, it's kind of facing, resistance level here. So even if you may not, believe we're going down to the C wave, I do think that if we break 590, we are, going to come retest 570 and even 555, right? So this is the channel. If it breaks this channel, it could make for a nice short. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And again, we know this is a bull flag. So if it were to break this resistance level at 620, then it could, go back up to 700. So yeah, bull and bear levels for that. Thank you so much. Have a great week.